What's up, guys? Welcome to the product selection walkthrough. This is a video series with me actually going through Amazon and looking for products that are profitable and can be the foundation of our business. Remember, I mentioned that before, the goal is to quickly eliminate products that don't fit our criteria because they're either too saturated or the price points just don't make sense. So actually, I wanted to introduce you guys to one of my favorite tools that I always use, and it's called Quip.com. QUIP.com. And I always keep it around to keep track of all my personal and business notes. So wherever I am, no matter what I'm doing, if I see a really cool product idea, I'll make sure to write it down in Quip, and then I'll take a look at it further in depth a little bit later, or I'll ask one of my team members to actually evaluate it for me. So recently, Nick and I were in Hawaii with our girlfriends and a bunch of our friends. And if you've ever been there, you know that as soon as you get out of the airport, you get hit with this blast of hot air, which is super nice. And you see a ton of people welcoming you with Hawaiian leis. And I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. I never thought about that product. So I added it to my list. And so going through it, I wanted to show you guys what our process is typically like in terms of when we're looking for products, how we evaluate it. And this is me actually doing it live. And then so for the first one that we're going to go through is the Hawaiian leis. So this one's a pretty interesting category. It does have a ton of comparables, so I'm actually going to skip it. You can see these like kind of packs of 4, pack of 12 at pretty low price points. So we did try including like a bigger bundle, like similar to this like kind of 36 pack that you see here at a higher price point. But once we were actually going through it a little bit more in depth, we decided that this was too saturated and the margins just weren't there. And so we actually did evaluate this one for you guys so you can kind of just see what we're typically doing. But we're adding a ton of products on here. And then once we kind of evaluate whether it was something that we really wanted to go after, again, based on the numbers. So, you know, going from left to right, we have the product name so that we can remember kind of what we were looking at. And then we have this priority column here, which is super important. So once we're evaluating it, if this is like, hey, we want to really move forward with this in pricing, we're actually going to be adding a 1 here if it's the number 1 priority. If it's like, you know, this is good, but not like super, super urgent, we'll put a number 2 there just so that we remember. We also include what we think that the price that we can sell the product at. We have the profit margin before cost of goods landed, but this is after all the Amazon fees, like the referral fee and then the fulfillment fees. We have what our estimates are going to be for the cost of goods sold, and then as well as the shipping cost, which comes into our cost of goods landed. And then like we had covered before, we estimate the 11% for both ads and storage, which is included in this column. And then this is our estimated profit margin. So after everything that we have, this is what our net should be. And so we have this nice and color coded for you guys to make it a lot simpler, but it just kind of walking through like, you know, if you go through with this product, this is what we're estimating in terms of your ROI and your contribution margin. And if it's in the yellow, you know, you can definitely try to merchandise it a little bit differently, maybe go a little bit higher quality or do a 2 or 3 pack and get the numbers to work. But, you know, based on what we evaluated here, using the existing listings that are available from our competitors, this was kind of like our first preliminary look. Contribution margin here, and then our fulfillment cost, which we can pull from the FBA calculator. And then all the way to the right, we actually do have a really advanced formula that's built out. You can kind of see, so you can see the formulas here. So we do have this really advanced formula that's built out that actually can tell you what the FBA fees are if you're changing up the dimensions. And I'll show you why we're going to have that a little bit later. But we also include the links over here so that we can kind of quickly come back to it. And then this blue section is kind of once we're going a little bit further in depth and we're like, hey, you know, this isn't too saturated, the preliminary look looks good in this product, then we'll do a further analysis, which is kind of phase 2 of whittling down the products. So like I mentioned, the Hawaiian leis, too many products, not my favorite. We're going to skip this one for right now. while I was in Hawaii, also, we went to a restaurant and we saw these kind of bamboo salad bowls. So I wanted to take a look at these. It's a pretty good category. It's not that saturated. You do see that it's pretty dominated by this one brand called, I guess, Lipper International. But the revenue is pretty good. The reviews are not that high relatively. But, once we got to looking at the actual profitability of the product, it was eliminated as well. And for sure, I'm sure there's other ways that we can merchandise it and make it work, but we decided to pass on this one as well. So the other day, I was actually catching up with one of my friends who owns a t-shirt printing business. And we were catching up, he was asking me for some advice on some marketing tricks and things like that. And then after the call, I was kind of reflecting about it, and I realized, t-shirt business is pretty interesting. You need obviously like silk screening frames, you need ink and all that kind of stuff for that type of product. And so I'm honestly not qualified to determine the quality of ink. And so I kind of wanted to skip on that one. But if you do know somebody that does, that can tell you the quality of the ink, that might be a great product. But, I decided to focus on the frame because I thought it was a little bit easier in terms of doing kind of quality control. And so I was looking at this, and it seems like the brand that really dominates it is called Speedball. They have quite a few listings. And then what I was thinking is like, okay, well, they're selling a 1-pack for $15, and they got 255 reviews, which is, on the higher end that we like to go after. But, we can really come in and differentiate ourselves by doing a 2-pack or a 3-pack. And so that was kind of the thought process. And then, so I recently actually moved. And one of the things that I needed was actually a utensil holder. So we were kind of looking around, and again, this one's a little bit more saturated than I would like. The cool thing is that there's a ton of different designs, so you can really come in with like, a rotated one or, a divided one like this one. But, too many comparables wasn't really what I wanted to go after. So we skipped on that one as well. And then I was actually catching up with my mom, and my mom was telling me about these contracts where firms will pay an acoustic paneling firm to actually outfit an entire office. And these guys are getting a huge contract. So I was like, that's an interesting product. Again, one that I never thought of. So I was taking a look at this one. The reviews are a little bit higher for the first two, but then afterwards it's not as competitive. So it's pretty interesting, and a lot of the volume is really high. But again, kind of going through, taking a look at the pricing, we weren't able to make it work. I think there could be higher quantity packs, and we should be able to look into it. But again, we're trying to eliminate products I wanted to pass. And so we ran the numbers again. And it was okay, but not fantastic. And so you can see the contribution margin improves because of the 2-pack, since you're dividing the fulfillment fees by a larger price point. The way that Amazon charges the fulfillment fees is that it's actually cheaper to send one 2-pack than it is to send 2 1-packs. So if we were actually going to do the 1-pack, we could pull the FBA fees from the FBA calculator, since it's the exact same product and the fees are going to be exactly the same. So I'm going to go to the FBA calculator, and since we're doing the exact same products, we can actually gather them here. So in the link over here, you can actually grab the ASIN and then put it into the FBA calculator. And then once you enter in the ASIN, if you just hit calculate, you're getting the fulfillment cost right here, the $478. And so that should actually match exactly the same for the 1-pack, which is right here. Now, but since we're doing the 2-pack, which is a completely new product, it's more difficult to actually figure out what the FBA fees are going to be. And that's why we have this pretty amazing and complex formula. So what we're going to do is, going back to the single product, we know that the first two sides are 16 inches and 12 inches. So what we're going to do is we're going to leave those alone, because we're actually going to be doubling the shortest side, which would actually happen. That would be the size if we sold 2 products. So it goes from 1 inch to 2 inches. And then we're going to do the same thing with the weight. So instead of being 0.8 pounds, we're going to be 1.6 pounds. We're going to enter that in over here in the 2-pack. So again, 16 inches, 12 inches by 2 inches. This should be updated to 1.6. And now the formula actually calculates out using all that information, what the fulfillment cost would be. Okay, so one of the other places that I like to go is going to the Amazon best sellers list. So this is a quick way to find it. You just Google it, pull it up. And then like I mentioned before, we want to go after the categories that are least sexy. So not home and kitchen, but maybe industrial and scientific or office products. So let's try office products. This is simply just because, again, it's not what everybody thinks about in their everyday life, and that makes it more attractive. So let's try, office supplies. I don't know. Let's do filing. So this is actually one that came to me the other day because, we get checks from different partners every so often, and then we have to kind of file them away. And I think it's pretty antiquated, but I need to come up with some type of system that would be helpful. And so one of the things that we're looking at is kind of like files, accessories, things like that. And I came across this and I wanted to show you guys. This is really interesting. So one of the cool things that Jungle Scout actually has is a filtering tool, which you can see up here. And so I use this often. So what I'll do is I'll put the lowest price at $12. And I know that I said 15 is what we want to sell at. But if we do like a 2-pack or a 3-pack, I want to include that because we can get that price point easily to the $20 or $25 price point if it's selling like a 1-pack at 12. And then let's say the highest price, we'll put it at 50. Highest review, let's just put it 200. And then we're gonna filter the results. And so this is, these were all cool. This one I actually really liked. It's a little bit unique, but it seems to be some type of filing system. But when you look at it, let's just pull it up in Market Intelligence just to confirm that it's a good product. This is doing about $9,000 in revenue right now. It has a pretty crazy margin. This is basically, pieces of paper selling for $29.95, and the number of reviews is 87. Now, this could be seasonal, so I'm definitely gonna wanna check it in Keepa and then see how it does over time. Just because tax season's coming up in the United States, so it very well could be something that is like abnormally high right now. It's definitely selling right now a lot better than it normally does, and so this one we can look into more. It's definitely a very interesting product. And when I went to Alibaba, the reason that I didn't prioritize this one is that it was hard to find. So I tried a bunch of different keywords and didn't come up. Okay, this one's pretty good. So I can reach out to some of the manufacturers before getting pricing here. And so you can see in the actual Excel file, I highlighted this one because I wasn't really confident in terms of what the pricing is, but the margins are really, really high. So this is one that we can keep track of and do a little bit more analysis and maybe trying to find some comparables and trying to see how seasonal this product really is. But definitely a priority one for me based on like the margins. I mean, the ROI is pretty crazy. Again, this is like way, way higher than we normally go after, but that's even better. Back into office products and see if we can find something that's a little bit easier to source. But overall, I do think that is a pretty good category. So, thinking about these kind of like tabs and dividers, it made me think also about like the labels or the stickers that you use to kind of, because again, I think this is often overlooked. It's a little bit different and you just don't normally use these. And so I wanted to see if there's different variations that we can use for our business. And so I know there's a dominating player in the space of labels called Avery. And so they do everything from shipping labels to address labels to printer labels, everything that you can think of. And so I want to try to see if we can find something a little bit different, a little bit more unique, because you can see like on the front page in this category, I mean, there's a ton of reviews here. It's a really high revenue, but again, I think there might be something here. So using the same criteria, we're gonna put $12 to $50. We're putting a max of 200 reviews, and then we're gonna try to filter the results. And then, so going back here, so one of the cool things is you can just extract in the next page. And then, so Jungle Scout is going to pull up all that information for you. And then we're just going to keep extracting the next page until we find something that's interesting. So let's try filtering these results. Cool. So like I mentioned, Avery is just completely dominating the space, which is totally fine. I've heard of Monarch. They are another like pretty big manufacturer. But what I did not expect to see is these kind of food labels. So let's take a look at these a little bit more. So interesting, dissolvable food labels. So it seems like one of the key attributes is that they leave no adhesive residue, and they actually can dissolve in water in about 30 seconds. Okay, that's pretty awesome. And then it seems like people are using these to mark the date that they put food into like a freezer or into like a refrigerator, so that you can make sure to clean out kind of your food storage. And so this is pretty interesting. Oh yeah, one more thing is that it seems like there's like 500 labels. So because this is under that $15 cutoff, what I do think that we can do is actually merchandise this as 1,000 labels, and then maybe sell it around like $17, $18, and then you're offering a great value to the customer, and it's a differentiated product. So it's harder to copy, and it really will set you apart when you're in the marketplace. So guys, I just wanted to make a quick amendment. I got some feedback from some of our early students that it wasn't really clear how to estimate the shipping per unit. Really appreciate the feedback, guys. That's how I make my sections a lot better. But I actually put together this table here specifically for you guys, and I'm going to cover it a little bit more in depth in this sourcing supply chain module under the air freight and ocean freight chapters. But this is actually a table that I had put together using our freight forwarder. And basically what it does is it estimates the actual per unit cost of freight, either by air or by sea, for 1,000 units, just to keep it consistent, based on the different size of the products. So this is like as if it was a sunglasses case. If you're sending it by air, it'd probably be around $1.05 for about 1,000 units per unit, and then it would be around 30 cents by sea. And again, these are really rough numbers. There's so many factors in terms of how many units. Obviously the size, if it's going by air, it's dependent on weight as well. If sea, actually weight is not a factor. But yeah, there's a ton of different factors, but this is just kind of a rough guide to help you guys. But as you start kind of narrowing it down, what we do is we'll put a placeholder based kind of roughly on the size and what we think it's going to cost. And then, right before we place the order, we'll make sure to double check with our freight forwarder, make sure that it still makes sense, and then we'll place the order. But truthfully, like it doesn't vary that much off from our estimates. And then, once you've launched a few products, it gets a lot simpler. But this is just kind of like a rough table to hopefully get you guys started and moving along. And then, some of the other big takeaways is that air freight is definitely a lot more expensive than sea. You can see that it's usually kind of 3 to 4 times a little bit more expensive, but you do save a ton of time. So like door to door, usually for air freight, we're estimating about 20 days, where versus sea, we're estimating around 40 days. So those are kind of the pros and cons. And then again, if you're really interested in this, you can kind of skip a little bit ahead to the supply chain module for freight. But otherwise, hopefully that's helpful for you guys. Thanks so much.